This is our top story this hour. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Marsh.
And I'm Renee Chu, in for Bill Leslie. Thanks for joining us. A tragic afternoon. We've been following this story since 11 o'clock. Emergency workers on the scene of a scaffolding collapse in downtown Raleigh.
Let's reset now for our audience just joining us this noon hour. It happened less than an hour ago in downtown Raleigh at a structure under construction on Fayetteville Street. That's where we find WRAL's Brian Schrader. He is near the scene. Brian, you've been there since this happened. What can you tell us and what can you see?
We are still seeing a lot of emergency response out here. Again, this happened only about an hour ago. In video that you can see from Sky 5, it appears as though scaffolding collapsed there on the side of the building facing Lenore Street. And if you're looking at that building from Lenore Street, it's the scaffolding there on the right. We can see that a part of that scaffolding work has sort of impaled the side of the building there between the 5th and 6th floor through the glass. And from Sky 5, we can see where part of that scaffolding apparently collapsed and fell into a parking lot across the street. We have learned that 3 people have died in this accident. We have not been able to confirm any other injuries at this point. When we first arrived at the scene, we saw dozens of construction workers, stunned, saddened, tears in their eyes, arms around each other, consoling each other, absolutely shocked by what had happened here. A witness said the scaffolding simply collapsed, and it happened just that quickly down here in downtown Raleigh. At this point, the big news for folks who are heading through downtown is to avoid this area around the south end of Fayetteville Street. South Street is blocked right now between Salisbury and Wilmington. Also, Lenore Street is blocked between Salisbury and Wilmington, and a big part of Fayetteville Street is blocked right now as they continue this investigation. Back to you.
No doubt, Brian, a very frightening scene. Can you tell us this, and it may be premature early in the investigation to know this, but of the 3 fatalities, do we know if all 3 are workers or if some innocent bystanders who just happen to be in the area, since this is a busy downtown area, if they are among those who have died from this accident?
Yeah, we have not been able to confirm anything about the identities of the victims this morning. That section of Lenore Street was pretty difficult for pedestrians or cars to cross as that construction work had continued there at Charter Square. And I should mention that this is happening at Charter Square, a building under construction, an 11-story glass tower across the street from the Marriott at Fayetteville and Lenore. We simply don't know who was involved in this accident. I should point out, as we try to figure out what caused this tragedy out here in downtown Raleigh, that an inspector and investigator with the Occupational Safety and Health people from the state just arrived a little while ago. Also, CCBI, Wake County City County Bureau of Identification just arrived on the scene as well just a few minutes ago. So we have sort of moved from the immediate emergency response phase of this accident now into the investigation phase, the very early investigation phase.
Okay, Brian Schrader giving us the latest from the ground there. We'll be checking in with you again soon. Thank you, Brian.
And again, that is at the Charter Square building on Fayetteville Street in downtown Raleigh, an 11-story building that was under construction. And we understand that 3 people have died from that scaffolding accident. There was scaffolding that was attached to the side of that building, and Sky 5 was able to show us that it appears a piece of it had broken off and then stuck through the glass from the 5th and 6th floors of that Charter Square building. And as Sky 5 zooms in, you can see that piece is what resulted in the deaths of 3 people. We do not yet know if those are in fact workers, but from what Brian was telling us on the scene there, dozens of construction workers, very saddened, stunned, and just silent as they learn of news of their coworkers after what started as a Monday morning routine and ended up in this tragic accident.
And this map here just gives you a lay of the land, just to kind of get you familiar exactly where this is located. And also this has some background on the development there. This is a project that has been under construction and in the works for quite some time. We were speaking to Brian Schrader earlier, and he mentioned that this was a project that began before the recession, but due to the recession, they had to slow down their progress, their work on it. But now they were moving ahead, and it was supposed to be a mixed-use building, residential space, and also some businesses at the bottom street level. So that was the future for this building. And of course, this is going to be a tragic part of that building's history, now learning of those 3 deaths. And it is a difficult way to start the work week for those who have lost a colleague on the job. Very difficult thing to cope with.
Keith Baker has been up in Sky 5 showing us the scene here. And Keith, you have seen a number of things since this has happened. Talk about, I guess, the activity that you have seen, and then also how you can describe the scaffolding on the building there and what may have happened.
Well, the activity seems to be picking up a little bit right at the scene now. I've seen a bunch of firemen actually headed over towards there, and I believe the OSHA inspector that Brian may have mentioned earlier is in that area. I'm not going to zoom in much further on this over there because there are human remains, and we want to be sensitive about showing that. However, if you look right behind those trees, you can see a big piece of metal, and that big piece of metal is what was the walkway on the scaffolding that broke. Here's the one to the left of it that is still intact. You can see there where it broke away from the building, and as you go on down, you can see just how much metal actually fell from the building. Exactly where the scaffolding was on the pole, I don't know if it was that high. We keep talking about it was five stories up. This walkway is actually much higher than that, and I don't know where the scaffolding was. The one that is still attached to the building that has impaled the window does seem to be at about 5 stories.
And of course,
but it's still a very busy scene.
Yeah, and Keith, what I was going to ask next is, of course, we're focused on the victims and those injured and those who have died in this, but another part of the story is going to be the impact on the traffic. From your vantage point, what can you tell us about detours and the traffic conditions out there, since this is in downtown Raleigh?
Well, it appears that most of the north-south corridors are open, except for Fayetteville Street. Fayetteville Street is blocked, but it's not a very north-south corridor anyway because it tees into that parking lot. The Lenore Street and I can't remember the name of that street right there, but they are blocked, but it's only a couple of blocks area where it's blocked. So I think the impact on the traffic should be minimal for the most part.
Okay, Keith Baker giving us the view from Sky 5 for us. Thank you, Keith.
Let's go back to Brian Schrader on the ground there at the scene. Brian, have you been able to talk with more people to find out more information on this?
We are in a staging area about a block away from the accident scene itself. We're at the corner of Salisbury and South Street, and we are right now awaiting the Wake County EMS director to come and talk about what he can tell us about this accident. Again, recapping what's happened this morning, about 11 o'clock, apparently scaffolding on the south side of the Charter Square building, which is that glass tower right across from the Marriott on Fayetteville Street near Lenore Street. It apparently collapsed, according to witnesses. 3 people were killed in this accident, and right now we have a lot of streets blocked off right around that accident site in downtown. We do have investigators from the North Carolina Occupational Safety and Health Department that have just arrived on the scene in the past half hour or so. Also, CCBI is on the scene. As Keith mentioned, as he can see up in the air from Sky 5, still a big emergency response, especially here along South Street, right in front of the Duke Energy Center for the Performing Arts. We still have a lot of Raleigh police, EMS crews, and Raleigh fire crews on the scene out here. The accident site itself there on the south side of the Charter Square building and in the parking lot, apparently right across the street, right across Lenore Street from that building that's been under construction for some time now. When we first arrived on the scene, we saw so many construction workers that were just shocked and saddened by what they knew had happened there. They knew it was bad, and they were consoling each other in tears. Just in the past couple of minutes, they have moved the construction workers who were still on the site that were sort of congregating in front of Memorial Auditorium and Duke Energy Center, moved them over into the interior of the building there. It is a little brisk and windy out here, and they've moved them inside. Still awaiting any word, official word, from Wake County EMS about other injuries that might be involved in this accident. And as soon as we see that press conference is starting, we will bring it to you.
Okay, yes, we will take that live. Brian Schrader giving us the latest from his vantage point. Thank you, Brian.
And we're also going to go to David Crabtree, who has new information on the scaffolding collapse. David.
Yeah, Renee, part of it is reiterating what Brian was talking about there, and that fact is that the State Department of Labor let us know that the local office of OSHA, Occupation Safety and Health Administration, are looking at this. They do have a rapid response team. They were there within an hour, less than an hour, on the scene, trying to begin their investigation and to determine what has happened. We have several crews working that both on the ground and in Sky 5 and here in the newsroom, looking at the personnel and safety records of the general contractor as well as the subcontractor. You know, unfortunately, whenever there is a major construction effort underway, part of what goes into the planning is an estimate of the number of accidents that are going to happen. There's no way you can build a building of this size, this magnitude, and to do it accident-free. It is going to happen. Unfortunately, today is one of those days where we've seen an accident, for whatever reason may have caused this, that is simply just tragic, beyond imagination for those people and their families and the workers and their families involved. We're going to continue to monitor what is happening on the ground, in the air, and again in the newsroom as the Department of Labor and OSHA does their work to determine as quickly as they can what may have happened, and then to dig into the deeper details as they continue to investigate. Michelle, Renee?
All right, David Crabtree giving us the latest with the investigation and where things stand at this point. Thank you, David.
But again, 3 lives lost. As we head to break, we want to take another look at the scene of the breaking news we first told you about at the top of the newscast. And again, a live look at the Charter Square building under construction where a scaffolding collapsed, killing 3 workers. We'll be right back.
Our live team coverage of this tragic scaffolding collapse continues with WRAL's Laura Leslie.
She is live at Salisbury and Lenore Streets with a look from the ground. Laura, what can you tell us?
Michelle, look, just to catch people up to date for what we know so far, this happened sometime around 11 o'clock this morning. We're being told by the fire chief that there are 3 fatalities, 1 other injury, at least that's a serious injury. We want to show you from a sort of a street perspective what we're talking about, the scaffolding collapse. If you'll have a look, you see, when you think about scaffoldings, these are not sort of rickety items. These are pretty, you know, large, heavy structures, metal structures. And if you look at the side of the building, you can see where there's one that appears to be bent. Now, we don't know, it's not confirmed that that is the side of what happened, but there's certainly a lot of police right underneath it. As you can, there's basically, it looks like just about every policeman in the area here, along with a lot of first emergency responders. They have several blocks roped off for their staging location. Now, we're told that the Department of Labor has somebody on scene. That's who will be investigating this construction accident. At this point, we don't have a lot more information to offer you. We are going to go down and try to talk to some of those first responders and see what we can find out for you. We'll keep you updated. Back to you.
All right, Laura Leslie live on the ground for us in downtown Raleigh. Thank you, Laura.
Now we're going to go to Elizabeth Gardner to talk about the weather conditions in downtown Raleigh. Some may be wondering if winds have played any role in this collapse. We do not know for sure, certainly, and we're working to see what caused the collapse. But Elizabeth, if you can describe what the weather conditions were like at the time of the accident.
Certainly. I wouldn't call it high winds. We have some gusty winds out there, but nothing above 25 miles per hour. And 25 miles per hour, you know, can toss around some tree limbs and that sort of thing. But 25 mile per hour winds would have a tough time, say, knocking your trash can over, most likely. So it's not anything that probably had a major impact. But of course, as you go up in the atmosphere, the winds do do tend to pick up a little bit. And of course, this was fairly high up on the building. This is a look at our current wind speed. And right now it's 8 miles per hour in Raleigh. Our winds are out of the east currently. We're looking around the area. Some of the stronger winds down south right now. Irwin at 12, 14 mile per hour winds in Goldsboro, 12 in Fayetteville, and 13 in Southern Pines. And these are all sustained winds. These are not the wind gusts. And earlier at about 11 o'clock, we had winds sustained at about 15 miles per hour. Now we take a look at some of the wind gusts. And right now it's quieted down a little bit. At about 11 o'clock, we had some winds gusting 20 to 25 miles per hour. And we don't show those everywhere because these sites just report wind gusts when we see that sort of condition. And we're not seeing gusty winds everywhere. And currently, we're not reporting any wind gusts at the airport. So just a steady wind right now at 8 miles per hour. And that's about what we saw, too, at about 11 o'clock when this accident happened. We had steady winds at about 15. We had some gusts around the area at 20 to 25, but nothing necessarily in the downtown area. However, let's take a look at this graphic, because if you've ever been downtown and maybe you were coming from your neighborhood and it wasn't particularly gusty, you get to downtown and we have this wind funnel effect. So the wind blows, it hits the buildings, and it compresses the wind. It makes it move faster. So sometimes we do have some stronger winds downtown that we might have reported at the airport. So with that assumption, if we had winds sustained at 15, it could have been sustained at 20 downtown, and potentially, again, we had 20 to 25 mile per hour wind gusts. Again, that may not be strong enough to have an effect on the scaffolding, but that's the conditions that we had downtown.
Welcome back to our live team coverage of this deadly scaffolding collapse. We just got some new details into our newsroom in regards to the companies involved in this project. We know the leasing company is said to be CBRE. That's the name on the banner. Is Brad, and Kashmir is the last name. The developer, Dominion Realty Partner. Renee?
And also the construction company is Choate Construction. I'm not sure on that pronunciation, but it's spelled C-H-O-A-T, Choate Construction. And then Associated Scaffolding is the company that has provided the scaffolding there on that project. Brian Schrader is on the ground there and has been staying on top of this story with new information here. And Brian, I understand new people are arriving to the scene?
That's right. Just a few moments ago, we saw a team from Associated Scaffolding walking around here on Salisbury Street at South Street, looking back there toward the Charter Square building there in the distance. And also just in the past few minutes, about 12:15 or so, some Raleigh police investigators arrived at the scene. So as we have been watching this unfold over the morning, this has gone from a recovery rescue kind of work, now starting to evolve into that very preliminary investigation. We're also waiting on Wake County's EMS director to come out and give us what he knows. We hope to have that for you in just a few minutes, and as soon as it happens, we'll bring it to you live. Back to you.
All right, Brian on the ground, keeping an eye out for that news conference to bring us some new details about this and what he's learning there. Thank you, Brian.
And still a lot of questions that we have about the victims involved, but we can tell you that 3 people were killed in the scaffolding collapse and 1 person injured.
All right, we'll continue to track this story for you throughout the hour. We'll have more on this top story on the other side of the break. Stay with us.